On the night America thought it was still safely watching Europe's war from across the ocean, the sky over New York Harbor split open like the end of the world. People in Lower Manhattan woke to windows shattering inward. In Jersey City, children were thrown from their beds. In the harbor, men who had spent their lives around gunpowder and steel swore they had never heard anything like it. The Statue of Liberty herself took the blast and kept standing, though she would never be quite the same again. For one brief, violent moment, the richest city in the United States looked as if it had been attacked by a foreign army. And in a way, it had. Before politicians found the words, before newspapers decided how much of the truth to print, there was only fire. Fire climbing over a place called Black Tom, a small man-made island in New York Harbor that most Americans had never heard of until it exploded. In 1916, America liked to think of itself as neutral. President Woodrow Wilson had been re-elected with the slogan, "He kept us out of war." Across the Atlantic, Europe had become a slaughterhouse. The trenches were swallowing young men by the hundreds of thousands. New machines, machine guns, heavy artillery, poison gas had turned battle into an industrial process. American factories produced shells, rifles, and explosives in quantities that grew larger every month. Port cities became arteries pumping war material toward Europe. To Germany, all of this was hypocrisy. From Berlin's point of view, American industry was feeding German enemies and helping prolong the war. Black Tom was not famous, it was useful. Sitting near Jersey City, the island served as a transfer point for freight, coal, chemicals, and machinery. And on that summer night, one of the most explosive cargoes in America, small arms ammunition, shells, and high explosives sat in freight cars by the water. Quiet rumors circulated that German operatives had begun attacking supply lines inside the United States. 1916. America was still learning what modern sabotage looked like. One of the men on duty that night was a watchman. The harbor after midnight had its own language, the wash of water, the groaning of freight cars, the smell of oil and smoke. Sometime after midnight, small fires were spotted burning among the freight cars. A flame where none should be, a glow under a wheel, sparks licking at wood, men shouting, an order to bring water, a whistle for the fire department. Someone running harder than he could breathe. Another man insisting it could still be contained. The Jersey City fireboats moved toward the danger, but no ordinary strategy could save Black Tom. Once the flames reached the loaded rail cars, the fire leapt as if directed by a hand. Then at 2:08 in the morning, the world detonated. The first major blast hit with such force that people across Manhattan believed an earthquake had struck. Windows burst for miles. In Brooklyn, in Hoboken, in the Bronx, people ran into streets in their nightclothes. They saw the sky, orange and black, pulsing with fire. Some thought the elevated trains had crashed. On Bedloe's Island, the blast struck hard enough to damage the monument. The torch would never again be open to visitors in the same way. Survival in history often includes invisible scars. On Ellis Island, windows shattered. Imagine those families, who had crossed oceans fleeing war, now waking on American soil to an explosion that made the new world sound like the old. Debris fell from the sky. Some fragments were pieces of metal hurled like artillery. The blast wave traveled up into the city. Ordinary people knew what fear felt like. By dawn, the outlines of the disaster emerged from smoke. Black Tom had been torn apart. Rail cars were twisted. Warehouses ruined. Property damage reached tens of millions. The dead included at least a few, though exact numbers were hard to pin down. One infant was thrown from a crib, but survived. Such details lodge in memory: a child, a crib, a room turning into a storm. Morning newspapers rushed out with dramatic headlines: accident, negligence, sabotage, war. Official caution competed with public suspicion. The diplomatic stakes were enormous. To understand why, look at the shadow war unfolding long before Black Tom exploded. Imperial Germany maintained an extensive network: diplomats, reservists, and sympathizers. Money moved quietly. Among the notorious figures was Franz von Rintelen, a naval intelligence officer, and Captain Franz von Papen. Their activities demonstrated the seriousness of German clandestine efforts. There was even a device, The cigar bomb, or pencil-like incendiary timer, developed to ignite after a delay. In 1916, much of the American public still found them shocking. Not every fire was sabotage. Industry was dangerous, yet the pattern was too persistent. America was learning that modern war could reach through commerce, sabotage, and infrastructure. Investigators found clues, but clues are not always enough. American law enforcement in 1916 lacked centralized structures, forensic tools, and counterintelligence habits. It was a country in transition. The city absorbed the shock and continued. Ferries resumed. Markets opened. But beneath the surface, the blast changed the American mind. The war in Europe no longer felt entirely over there. A grocer sweeping glass muttered that America ought to stop pretending. Immigrants who had fled artillery looked haunted by hearing war again in New York Harbor. Sensory memory lingers. Berlin denied responsibility. Ethnic politics complicated everything. Millions of German Americans lived in the United States. The distinction between agents and citizens was one many did not make cleanly. Black Tom did not by itself bring America into war. But it mattered as a revelation of vulnerability. When the Zimmerman telegram became public in 1917, the memory of Black Tom was alive in the nerves. In the years that followed, the pursuit of accountability became one of the strangest legal afterlives. The path to responsibility stretched for decades. Investigations continued. Claims were filed. Commission examined evidence. Eventually, the Mixed Claims Commission concluded that Germany had indeed been liable for the Black Tom explosion. Accountability often limps forward over years, even generations. It was now a recognized act. Black Tom exploded in the shadow of the Statue of Liberty, the monument tied to America's self-image as sanctuary and strength. A secret war under the gaze of liberty. Survival looks like meaning. The event often surprises Americans who know Pearl Harbor and 9/11, but have never heard of the night the harbor erupted in 1916. School history compresses, public memory simplifies. We remember declarations, not covert campaigns. Imagine the harbor again. The spark, the line, the panic. Then the blast, glass, steel, flame. Liberty herself, struck by fragments of a war America claimed was not its own. Like, comment, and subscribe for the next chapter.